Hello, this is Porter Nilsson with Random Art Attack, and today we are going to be doing part 1 of the minigame tutorial series. So, we're going to be working mostly with Blender and Unity, covering 2 topics, creative objects in Blender, and exporting to Unity. Out of all these topics, the most complex thing will probably be the blend shapes, but we make it easy. Let's go ahead and dive right into Blender. So the first thing that we'd like to do is go ahead and delete these things. We don't need the camera and the lamp, so just Shift, Collect, Delete. Now let's talk about the Blender units to Unity units. This is a 2x2 cube. In Blender, if I imported this into Unity, it would also be a 2x2. One blend unit equals one unit unit. Now, how big is that in physical space? That is about 1 meter. So here we have a 2 meter by 2 meter by 2 meter cube. That's roughly 6.5 feet by 6.5 feet by 6.5 feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this box. I'm kind of going to just make a reference of how big I want my bow to be. So it's not too big, it's not too small. It's roughly the same size. So tab into edit mode, hit S, and then 0.5 to scale it down like that. Tab back out into object mode. And you can see that I'm kind of just looking around with the middle mouse button to rotate it. There's a new window I just opened up down there at the bottom. Hit Shift S, put the cursor at the center. Now as I hit Shift A, it's going to create it at that point, as opposed to if you click somewhere else and hit Shift A and put a cube, it's going to put it there. So I want it in the middle. Shift S, center, and then put a cylinder. We want this to be blocky, so probably about 8 vertices or so. And we want a triangle fan, otherwise the top there will be an n-gon. And that's not acceptable in any game engine. So now go ahead and hit, not P, go ahead and hit, I think it's 5. There you go. 5 is going to be the orthographic view. Now if you tab back into edit mode, over here it's edit mode, object mode, you can see down there. Edit mode lets you kind of change the vertices. So 1 front view, 3 side view, 1 front view, 3 side view. I'm going to go ahead and select both of these, Shift select, and you can see that this was too big, so I'm going to scale it down to 0.5, S 0.5. And so that's one Blender unit right there. That's what I want my bow to fit into. So hit S and just scale that in by dragging the mouse. And then that's the base of the bow. As I hit B for box select, you can see it doesn't select all the vertices there in the back. So I want to be able to select back vertices. Down here, there's an option. It's limit selection visible. I'm going to click that off. And now B, box select, and it will select everything. Now if you hit E, this extrudes it. S will scale this. R will rotate it. E to extrude. S for scale, etc. I'm just going to keep repeating this. E, S, R. And I'm basically just making the shaft of the bow right now. Now I didn't like this, so I'll go C for circle select, and I'm going to select those and hit R, and then G to move those. And that's the top of the bow. Now I want to mirror this down, so I'll hit A, W, and then symmetrize. A selects everything, W opens up the mention. And now I want to go from the Z to Z, not Y, Y. So over here, direction Z to Z, and you can see it makes it symmetrical along the Z axis. Now as I look at the original box we made, it is about 3 feet, so that's perfect. Now I don't like this right here, so I'm going to go ahead and select that with B, box select, and scale it. I'm just basically hitting G to select, S to scale, G to move. I'm liking what this is, but I want a grip. So I'm going to hit C, S to scale this, and Z to constrain it along the Z axis. So that's the handguard right there. E for extrude. So I'm extruding it. Escape, so it's actually extruded. So there's duplicate vertices right there. Alt S will scale it from the center there. So just Alt S. And there you go. We got the handle. So there's our bow. So tab into edit mode again. Go to materials. It's that little circle thing. Hit new. And I'm going to change it to a kind of a wood color here. I can also change this in Unity, but it's good to get kind of the base color here. Assign. Let's go ahead and name this wood. So it's assigned the wood texture to this. So I'm just trying to get a good wood color. I'm not really loving it, but there we go. Good enough. Now I want this handguard to be red. So I'm going to hit A to unselect everything, B, box select, and I'll just select all those vertices. Now up here, I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus sign to create a new material. Let's call this red, right? Super clever. Just change it. Now you'll see that it's not actually assigned, so I'm going to hit assign, like that. And there we have the wood and the red materials assigned to the bow. If you hit Shift A cube, we're going to go ahead and make a string basically, so I'm going to scale this way down. G to move, S to scale way down, and that's as thick as I want the string to be. So S to scale, Z to constrain along the Z axis. I'm going to just go ahead and scale this up, just like that. Hit G to move it, and then Y to constrain along the Y axis to move it, and there's my string. Now I unselected this, so how do you reselect this without, you just hover over a vertex and hit L. You can do it via face by going down there and hitting face and L, and it'll select it. Add a new material, let's call this string. Oh, black, okay. And then assign, and now we have a black string right there. We want the arrow to be facing forward as we make it, not up. Usually you have it facing up, but I'm going to have all the physics applied in a forward direction. So, as you hit 7, you can see the top. It says top orthographic. 1 is front, and 3 is right. So outside of edit mode, go to a different layer. Hit Shift S, make sure the center's still there. Shift A, let's make a cube. Tab into edit mode. Never edit something outside of edit mode. I went ahead and scaled that cube down, so this is going to be the arrow. S to scale, Y to constrain on the Y axis, and scale it smaller, scale along the Y again. I'm basically just making a shaft, and let's make sure vertex mode, select these, Shift D will duplicate this thing, and now we have some extra vertices that we're going to make into the arrowhead. Okay, so S to scale it, G, I'm just going to move it back slightly, and then E to extrude. Okay, so that's going to be the little extra thickness to the arrowhead there. E for extrude again, scale it, G to move it again, extrude again, scale it way down, not quite 0, and you can see that it's looking more and more like an arrow. I'm not liking what it looks like quite. It doesn't look flat enough to be an arrow. So I'm going to hit Control R, create a edge loop, and then you can see it can drag. So I hit escape to just make it center there. And now hit S and X to scale along the X. So I'm kind of flattening out the arrow with an extra edge loop there. So Control R. I'm going to unselect these with C select and then middle mouse button. And then I just want these two actually, so I'm just going to shift select those. S, and then scale those along the x-axis. Alright, so you kind of get an arrowhead that I want. Hit L. Scale along the Z to make it a little bit flatter. And I'm liking a lot more what that's looking like. Box select those, move it out so it's even pointier. C select those, scale those in a little bit more. And you can kind of play around until you get the shape you want. If I want to combine these two vertices, I select those, hit Alt-M, merge at center. All of those, Alt-M, merge at center. Select those two, Alt-M, merge at center. And you can see that I'm getting an even better looking tip. Let's go to side view, circle select the back, hit Shift D, and it duplicates it once again. Scale this with S, move this back with G, and then E to extrude. This is going to be the back part of the arrow. Hit 7 to go to top view. Now, when this goes in the string, I want a little kind of a groove to be right there. So Control R to do edge select, or excuse me, edge add. And then you mouse up to get more. Just get the vertices here and here, hit extrude E, and the string is going to fit right there. So it's kind of looking like a bow and arrow. Now I'm going to hit box select these, scale those back with G, And that's looking a lot more the way we want. So I want to add some feathers, so let's do Shift A, get a cube. Now front view, scale it along the x-axis, so S, X. Scale more, scale along the X once again. And that's about as thick as the feather's going to be. I'm going to G and just move it up here so that I can kind of play around with it. I'm going to slide this out with G and G. So I'm just moving these with G's. C select, going to move it down. And then that's basically what it's going to look like. I'm going to add some edge loops. So Control R, scroll with your mouse button, get just 2 like that, and then just G, move these around until it looks the way you want it. So I like how that's looking. You can play around with it as long as you want to. I'm going to go ahead and add material, so I'm going to add red to this. L to select this back. Create a new one. I'm just selecting black again. For the metal, I hit L, plus, and I need a new metal one, so let's call this metal, or gray. And that's, oh, forgot to assign it. So if you L select this and hit H, we can actually get to the wood. We'll assign the metal later. So L select that, and now create a new one, create wood, assign that, and then we're good to go. Now this feather isn't exactly where we want it. We want to kind of be down the shaft. So hit L, and then R to rotate, but it's rotating around the center. So I want to go to 3D cursor. Now if I hit R, you can see that it's working, so I just hit 90, and I'll rotate it 90 degrees. So that's where I want it to be. Now I could duplicate this 3 times. So 1/3 of 360 is 1/20, so I could rotate 120, rotate 120, and then that works out just fine. But there's another cool trick that you can use, so let me go ahead and show that to you. So I'm going to just undo this here. Select this, and then in the Tools panel by hitting T over here, you see Spin. It's above the knife. So I was in Tools. It's right there. So I hit Spin. Now it spins at 90 degrees. Well, I want 360, and I want the steps to be 3, because I only want 3 feathers. Now it made actually 3 different ones, so there's a duplicate here, so if I hit G, you can see that it's underneath there. So just delete that. Delete vertices, there we go. Now let's go ahead and add this. I should have done this a while ago, but let's assign that. So that's my bow and arrow. Shift S, Shift select, we can see the 2 different ones and see if they're the right sizes. So tab into edit mode. It is too big, so I'm going to scale this down with S, and then G to move this, and I want it to be kind of like this when I pull it all the way back. It needs to fit. Now you can see that I had the edging wrong, so I'm going to hit negative 90 degrees as I rotate this. Now as I pull the string back, you can see that it will actually fit in the knob there. So I'm just going to move it to where it's going to launch, so this is its default state. And if you zoom in, you could actually see it fits in just right. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some shape keys to this so that I can pull it back. Super easy. What I do is I go ahead and select the bow, tab into edit mode. Up here with these little vertices, it looks like 3 vertices, shape keys, you hit plus. You actually have to add it outside of edit mode, excuse me. So it gives me my basis. This is what it's going to always default back to. And then I'm going to plus again and name it whatever you want. I'm going to just call it something generic like pulled, right? Tab into edit mode. So if you change the value to 100, this is what it's going to be at 100 when it's pulled. So I'm going to add an edge loop here with Control R so that I can actually pull it back. And I'm going to test how far back I want to do it. So I'm going to go back into the arrow, pull it back. I want it to go back there, so select the string on the bow and actually go to where I want it to be. Okay. So this is what I want it to be like when it's pulled. So now as you scrub through the different value, you can see that this is what it's going to do, which is pretty good. Now I want the bow to actually bend as well. So tab back in edit mode, select this, hit, make sure that we go to active element here. So circle select everything, R, and then just slide it back like that. Circle middle mouse button, unselect those, scroll it back, R, move it, and there we go. Now you gotta do the same thing. You can't symmetricize this, otherwise the shape key won't work. So it's not working out perfectly. If you want to be perfect, you could actually have recorded how much you rotated it by and how much you moved it by, and then just duplicate those actions by manually. So I could have done like R 20 degrees, but it's fine doing it by eye. So just circle select R, drag forward. I'm just kind of using these lines to help guide me a little bit. Circle select these, drag them back, and there we go. Now tab out that, and as you scrub through it, you can see what's going on with the bow. It looks like it's pulling it back, and it's looking pretty good. But it is stretching a little bit right here. So circle select this, move it up, circle select this, move it down, and now it's going to scrub even better. And a little bit more with this. You can just kind of play around with it until you get it the way that you want to. You saw that I tried to select everything, but that just doesn't work. All right. Looking great. Now I can actually affect these in Unity, so that's why I'm making these blend shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and make this back to the default state, move the arrow forward so that I can create the basis. This is how the arrow is going to be starting. Now you can see that this is going through the bow. That's really not what you want. So what I want to do is I actually kind of want to move this out. So I'm back in the bow, I'm going to go to the basis, and I'm going to turn this bow just slightly off to the side. So went to the top view with 7, G moved it over, and then R to rotate a little bit, then just move it like that. So you don't really hold a bow straight. I'm going to hold it off to the side like that, and it's going to be the arrow that's going straight. So the arrow is going to fire in the correct direction. Now as the string goes back, we don't want it to go diagonal. We do want it to go straight back. So I'm just playing around a little bit, getting it where I want it. So just rotate it to the right place. It's okay if there's a little overlap as you see this. So the string's where it wants to be. And you can see front view, the bow is slightly off, but it's looking good. I'm going to pull, and you can see that it'll actually pull it straight back. And that's what we want. So when we fire this, we want to go straight forward, not this weird diagonal awkward thing. So that's looking good. So now let's go ahead and take the, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 units back. Tap into this, add another one. I'm going to call it pulled again. And then I'm going to check that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tab in, make sure the value is 100%. And go 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think that's about where we want it. That's pretty accurate. So as you pull it back, it's going to go like that. And then this is going to pull back with this as well. And so as we affect those variables, both of them will move back together. So let's go to a new layer. The arrow and the bow are done. So I'm going to create a cylinder here for the target. 8 vertices, triangle fan, that's good. Tab into this. This is side view, so we hit R, rotate it 90 degrees. So this is the front view. And that's way too few vertices. I want a little bit more. So I'm going to just delete that, hit Shift A, cylinder. Let's try 16 vertices here. Again, rotate that 9 degrees along the x-axis. 3 to side view, scale it along the y-axis, and scale it down. And I can scale this to the correct size later, so I'm just basically getting the center here. If you hit Alt and select, it'll just select the vertices along an edge. I'm going to delete that. and delete this. I only want basically the front here. So this is the center of the target is what we create. Alt select those vertices, E to extrude, and then not Alt S, excuse me. We want median point, individual origins actually. So E, extrude, scale with S, and you can see that that's scaling perfectly. E extrude, escape, S to scale, extrude, S, etc. So we're basically making the different rings of the target here. Now, it's not the dimensions we want, so we're going to play around with this a little bit. Hit Alt S and scale that down. Alt select, scale it, Alt select, and that's looking a lot better. Now I'm going to add different colors. So circle select with C. Material, let's do 2 materials. The first one, let's do red. And the second one, let's do white. And we just make that white. Now face select mode, Alt select, and you'll see that it selects a ring. Now you can hit Shift and Alt S to select this and assign the white. And there's our target. Now we do want some thickness to this, so I'm going to Alt select the vertices around that loop. E to extrude along the Y-axis. And so it's still empty on the back, but that's fine. We're going to fix that later. E to extrude again, scale it, bring it along the Y-axis again, and then scale it like this. Move it a little bit more. I'm just going to kind of create a wooden border around this. Now down here there's a snapping, so it's by default snaps to the grid. I'm going to snap to the vertex. Now hover over it, and it snaps, but it's not snapping constrained to the Y. So G, Y, and it'll snap constrained along the Y-axis. So turn off the snapping, E to extrude, extrude along the Y-axis, and then E one last time, Alt M, and it will merge it at the center. So it's going to close the face. I'm just going to box select these faces, slide these to where I want them, and then add a new material. Let's do it wood again, and assign it. So there we have the target. Yeah, so you can see that this target is way too small. So go ahead and tab into edit mode. You never want to scale outside of this because it changes the scale factor. So tab in, scale it to where you want. I'm just thinking about an arrow actually sticking into this, so that's about right. So just 2 more things left. Some trees and some terrain. Let's go ahead and do the terrain first. So go to top view, create a plane. So this is the terrain, this is what we're going to be. So I'm just going to scale this up a ton. So this is as big as the bow and arrow, so that's a pretty big area right there. And you can play around with that scaling in Unity really fast. So tab back in. Let's go ahead and create a new material here. And let's call this grass and assign that. Now hit W and then subdivide. You can see that it subdivides it. Don't do it too much because we can subdivide it later and get some smoothness. Now I'm just going to shift select a few of these vertices. And then you can move them up with G and then Z to constrain. But over here, this is called proportional editing. You click this and you can change the shape. You can go ahead and play around with the different ones. I like the smooth for hills. So hit G, Z, and then middle mouse button will change how much of it is affected. So we do want some flat area for where we stand, so I'm going to just scale that down like that. Select some different ones. We're going to create some variability, G, Z, and we get some more hills like that. Now I'm going to select everything again. And I'm going to hit a spacebar and search triangulate. So it's going to triangulate this, so this is what it's going to look like in Unity. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this again. Scale this way up. Now I'm going to make this one into mountains. So I'm going to just select some just random ones like this. I'm going to go to random proportional editing, G and then C, and I'm going to basically make mountains like this. Now I don't want all these points to be the same height, so after this I can kind of move them higher or lower by unselecting some. Now I'm going to select a few more random ones, move them up. I'm getting some nice variety. And that's the mountain range. So let's create a new color. So I'm going to call this mountain, make it kind of a gray color, and assign it. I can't remove the grass, so I'm going to make it into a different material later. So I can scroll, put it where I want it. I do kind of like how there's rocks going through the plane like that, so I'm going to leave it. I'm going to subdivide this a little bit, so you can see that the terrain is keeping its shape, but with the subdivision, I can now box select the tops, and it gives me more geometry to add material to. So I'm going to add snow, and I'm going to make this white. I guess I could have used the white material, but that's okay. And now I have some snow. And now you can go in and kind of just add a little bit more if you want to. And with the extra geometry, you can actually say that it's giving a little bit more geometry as well. I kind of like that. I'm going to subdivide this one more time as well and give a little bit more randomness here. And move it down to get a little bit more rocks inside of there. And I like that. So we're going to put our player right about here, and we're going to go ahead and put some variety around that place. So we need some sort of decoration, so we're going to go ahead and create a cylinder and make a tree out of this. Tab into this, scale it down for the trunk, and then you can see the little dot there. That is the center of rotation. So the tree is actually going to be somewhat in the ground based on the center of rotation, which is what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and scale the top here and rotate, scale, and then rotate, scale. And you can do this a variety of different ways. We're just making different trees. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, move it over with G, scale it up, and you can see that this is a different color, right? Go ahead and we'll fix that later. It's just the normals are facing the wrong direction. So I'm basically making 3 trees all at the same time so that they're roughly the same size. Shift duplicate this, and then just basically moving these. Just with G, R, and S. Now hit L and go to shading, recalculate normals, and it'll flip the normals to the correct direction that you want them. Now you could have had this have more geometry, but I'm just trying to keep it simple for this game. Just kind of want a polygon looking design to this. So we're going to add some branches here. I'm going to make this 5, a cylinder with 5, so it's substantially less geometry. Now you can see right here, we're not really going to care about the faces and the vertices. We could have deleted those vertices on the bottom there, or the faces on the bottom, because they're never going to be seen because they're going to be in the ground. But we really don't care about that because it's so low poly as it is. Conserving polygon count really isn't our priority. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a branch like this. And then just hit Shift D to duplicate this. I'm going to rotate this along the Z-axis and just put it right this. Move it a little bit so there is some variety. Scale this up. And you can see that I'm basically using the same assets to create new assets. And I'm liking what this looks like. Now we want some branches to go different dimensions than it just being flat like it is. So I'm going to duplicate this, go to the side view with 3, rotate this along the Z-axis 90 degrees, and now you have another branch. Now I'm just going to kind of put it where I want it, put this one where I want it, Shift duplicate, put this where I want it, and you can kind of see that it's starting to give it some variety. Now go to side front view, P, and it's going to separate this, box select P to separate these. So now that they're actually 3 different models. So I could have created those all separately in the start, but I created them kind of with each other so I could use each other. Now this little point is the center of axis, so as I rotate it, you can see it rotates around that point. So you could either tab into edit mode and move it like this. And now the center is in the correct place, and I'll move the geometry so that it's somewhere else. tab in, move this, and now the center is where we want it. Move it to a different layer. So I have 3 different layers with 3 different trees. So going to top view on the first tree, tabbing in, selecting this, and going to side view, making sure it's in the right place. And I can just use the transforms to get it to where I want. I'm going to go ahead and change it a little bit. But there you go. So that's the trunk of the first tree. Going to do the same thing for the next couple trees. Just going to move it down, want it lower. So I'm just hitting 7, 1, and 3 to do the different perspectives. I can rotate it a little bit so it's not the same as the other tree's rotation. And there we go. But I'm going to be rotating in Unity as well, so it really doesn't matter all that much. Liking where that is, going to scale that down, and moving that over like that. Now, I could put more branches, I could do anything else I want, but I'm just going for simplicity. So I'm going to go ahead and tab into the first tree, add a wood material. And I'm going to make a new material and call it leaves. Going to make it kind of darker than the grass. Shift A, icosphere, and this is actually exactly what we want. So L to select, scale this any way you want it to. You can assign the leaves. Now you can change the scale along the Y if you want to, but I kind of like the circular. So I'm just going to scale this up. Shift D to duplicate, so I'm just moving these around. Shift D to duplicate, G to move, S to scale. And there's a basic tree. Now, if I just go ahead and fix this a little bit, maybe add a little bit more. There we go. Happy looking tree. L to select this, Shift D to duplicate. I'm going to scale this up a bit. Now I'm going to do this for the other trees as well. So I could just take this, Shift D, duplicate this, P to separate it, and now you can see that I have this. I could hit M, move it to the next layer, and then with both of these, hit Control J. I'll join these two. Okay, I could have created a new isosphere and done it by scratch, but I just want to show you how you can actually merge and export those as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate these, scale them, move them, just like I did the other tree. Shift D, go ahead and make a smaller one right there. Yeah, there you go. Not rocket science, just create trees you want to. So this one I'm not going to duplicate, I'll show you the other way. So Shift A, icosphere, and then I can just do it from scratch. Now you see that I haven't assigned the material yet, so I'm going to show you kind of how we're going to work around that. Because if I have all these different branches, or all these different leaves, it's going to be hard to select them all individually and assign them. I could, but there's a fast way. So hit L, select those, and assign wood. And now I could do an inverse selection. I could hit H to hide, Control I to invert, or if you don't have anything selected, hit L for one of these. Down here for select, go to select similar, and then vertex amount of adjacent sides, right there. And then I can do it that way. So I want to see the scaling. There's the bow. So this is about 6, 12, 15 feet. That's about right. So now I need to name these. So up here, there is the square there, and go ahead and name it bow. Hit enter. Name this arrow. I could have been doing this along the way, but I kind of just wanted to save it to the end. So right here, select the mountains. I'm going to hit hide with H. And then tree 1. .001 is the naming convention. I don't think it... Oh yeah, it's actually 000, not 1. There we go. Call this tree. You can copy and paste this, so Control C, and then Control V, and it'll actually just update the name. So it changes the 1, 2, 3, which is kind of cool. Alt H to unhide those mountains. I could export these all as one thing, but you have to create the prefabs interestingly, and I actually enjoy exporting these separately. So if I want to make changes to one, I don't have to make changes to everything. Okay, it doesn't matter what it exports it as, so exports.fbx. Go to where you want to save it. I always put it under assets. And we can create new folders within Unity later. So I'm going to just call this bow. Down here you have to do select objects and experimental apply transformation. If you don't do the experimental apply transformation, it's going to rotate it weird and the scaling is nuts. So export it. Now if we go to Unity, it'll take a second to load, and there is our bow. And it's showing where the shape key will take it to at the max. Skin mesh here has some blend shapes, and you can check that variable. And I can edit that via script, so I can actually reference that skin mesh and then insert different variables for the pole. So that's kind of cool. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. So the arrow, export FBX. Now I'll show you what it looks like to export two things at the same time. So I'm going to do export FBX with both those selected. I'm going to call it just field. Now you can see that it's two different models within the same thing. And it's going to have two different models within it, which is fine. But if I make changes, it gets a little dicey with prefabs, and so I don't enjoy that workflow. If you know this is exactly what you want it to look like and you're never going to change this again, it's going to be fine. But I don't want to take that risk. And let's go ahead and wrap it up right there so this video doesn't go too long. Your homework is going to be to create some additional props. I'd like you to create a river on the terrain, create some bushes, and create some flowers. Now, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to, but I would strongly encourage you because there's nothing else that I've ever found on YouTube that gives you this option of trying something yourself and then watching a video and seeing how a professional would do that exact same task. So I've given you all the tools that you need. Go ahead and play around with this, see if you can't create your own different props, and then watch the video tutorial and see how I might do it. The river is especially interesting. The bushes and the flowers, not so much. So if there's only one thing I'd recommend, if you're crunched on time, just do the river. All right, thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you next video tutorial.